We remember the first Assassin's Creed as the game that redefined a genre, for better or for worse. A game that made the bed for what would become one of the most influential and known game design, the open world experience. When it became a true trend, the only fact that you could go everywhere, find things, traverse environment as you please was such a big appeal that some games just reveled in it. Think of Bethesda's open world RPG formula, or any map marker driven Ubisoft type of games that came out of AC's breakthrough. The possibility to just walk through the world with almost no boundaries was such a unique experience in and of itself that you could lose yourself into it for hours on end. Now the genre has been present for a long time. It marked the last decade of gaming and is at the core of so many games that it's possible that its inherent appeal has started to wear off. We've seen vast lands beautifully crafted, the almost cliché idea that if you can see a mountain in the horizon you can climb it, the promise of freedom. It's a great foundation, but the more I play open world games, the more it reminds me of the phrase, wide as an ocean, deep as a puddle. Because by playing it a little bit too much, I've started to expect more. And it is not a question of scope, of resolution, or draw distance. It is a question of purpose. It seems that the question, where can I go, what can I do, should be replaced by why should I go, and why should I do it? You can climb a mountain, but you have nothing to do there, or maybe you accept a quest which ends up being an errand. Go there, pick this up, come back for your reward. This can be a compelling reason when it comes to the question of progression, but the exploration is tied to an idea of transaction. The experience is not valued by itself. So how do we make exploration worthwhile? How do we make it so that it's not work to go somewhere, but actually what you want to do? And that once you've done it, how do we keep you chasing for another moment just like that? How do we infuse purpose? To understand purpose, we must first take a look at what it is we seek while we explore. There's two ways motivation manifests, either internally or externally. We either do something because we inherently want to do it, or we do it because someone else gave us an incentive to do so. In the case of games, incentives are part of game design. Rewards, story progression, experience points, you name it. We know these systems. What is a little harder to craft is a context where the incentive is not part of the system, but is driven by the player's experience. Games can create such cathartic moments, those times when you almost have to sit back and take in what just happened. Some of those moments are iconic in the history of gaming, like the famous point in Dark Souls when you come up the elevator after being in the depth of the earth, and as you climb back to the surface you end up right where you started the game. You came back to a place you had left for so long that seeing it again makes you feel like the world is a coherent place. That moment gives you no XP, no better weapon, no armor, no new spell. It just makes you feel like that whole time you were lost. You were in fact just making the world your own. And that the art of the exploration is something so unique to our media that we must understand it. Being lost. At no point in a movie do you ever feel like you can't get out. You feel it through the characters, but no matter how you feel, the movie is going to go on at the exact same rhythm, not waiting for you to find the solution. Only in video games is the progression of the story or access to the whole content locked behind your ability to surpass something. And it is such a compelling idea. Being proud of the way you handle the situation is an experience that almost no other art form can emulate. And by streamlining exploration, games can lose that feeling. Even more so when you grew accustomed to the ever-repeating open-world activities that feel similar from game to game. So when you finally encounter something new, or something old, that defy these principles, it feels special. Not necessarily comfortable, but special. Because for once, you actually had to explore. We are wired to find patterns, to seek answers. We like to make sense of the world. And it is a key component of transforming the notion of exploration. Because what we can do is transform a common errand, something asked by a needy NPC, into just a question. You see a locked door, you want to know how to open it. But if the game has taught you before that the only way to address these kinds of problems is to go through the proper quest, this question won't really stay with you. But if you know that the world is a coherent place, that a locked door demands to have a key, and that the game won't stop you from opening it without a good reason, then you'll want to try to do something about it. And some games do it really well. In fact, the whole genre is built on that foundation, Metroidvanias. So without seeking for all games to be part of that genre, we can still use some of the lessons that they teach us. What works and what doesn't. Let's take two relatively recently released popular iterations from this category, Hollow Knight and Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Both games function on the same principle. There's a central threat that you have to deal with, and you are thrown into the world without any real directions outside of that goal. You're given a basic map, but no compass. Some places are not attainable, they're locked behind obstacles that you feel like you could manage if only you found a power or an ability that would let you interact with it. And just at that moment, we have something important. A promise. A promise that the world is built on the idea that every door has a key, and that it is yours to explore. You can solve these problems by yourself. It's all out there. For most of it, there's no need to trigger something, to have a discussion with an NPC for power-up to appear. It is just there. You enter a world that existed before you, and now you have to adapt to it. You have to find a way to make it yours. But both these games present themselves in different ways. Hollow Knight is a way harder experience than Ori. Combat is more tight, you have souls-like mechanics such as the corpse run or the equivalent of the bonfire, and it shapes the way you approach exploration. Hollow Knight builds on the tension that every step you take is dangerous. The world is hostile, and that has a real impact. It almost feels like you are underwater missing air as your resources grow thin. But then when you see that bench, that place where you can save, the place where you are safe, you can breathe again. And that feeling is something that the players are going to seek again and again. The thrill of overcoming adversity to satisfy their curiosity. As you explore, you find these upgrades, these new ways to move around, and the world starts to open up to you. And yet, it is not only about mastering the game within its mechanics, but mostly about knowing the layout of the world, remembering these past clues you saw, engaging with it in a way that is deeply personal. In the case of Ori and the Will of the Wisps, even though it is at the core a very similar game, it presents a different view on exploration. Again, you are seeking upgrades and new powers, but the system is so much more forgiving. You have automatic save points that has no real impact outside of bringing you back a couple of seconds, and it makes for a more peaceful and stress-free navigation. And the reason it does so is because it conveys the theme of the game. It is about restoring life and overcoming grief in this poetic world. The message is more hopeful, and therefore the gameplay fits the message. So the developers crafted the experience of exploration to fit the tone of the game. They use curiosity in conjunction with hints to drive the player. And of course, at the end of the day, there is a question of reward. Both games have RPG elements. Exploration is used to level up, but the initial motivation is that promise of a coherent, carefully crafted world. For all of this to work, the game makers need to make us a promise that what we will find by following our curiosity will be worth our time. And when they build a world with passion and imagination, every step you take in it will fulfill that promise. In the case of 3D open worlds, the implication is often different. We tend to use the term exploration for any massive landscapes where it's possible to go wherever you want. But in my experience, playing these titles really made me feel like I was exploring, even less so with the advent of map markers. I think it's usually way more about the narrative and the ambiance, because the game wouldn't work otherwise. In these cases, the primary role of the world is immersion. Cyberpunk 2077 wants to make you feel the city you live in, and small contained levels wouldn't work for that kind of experience. The David against Goliath struggle wouldn't be as jarring in Ghost of Tsushima if the occupied land wasn't a land. These games really want to sell you a believable world first, and the open world feature serves that purpose. But rarely do you feel like you actually have to find something. You're very far from the feeling of adventuring into the unknown when a dotted line is laid before you. The 4 square kilometers is there to immerse you way more than it is there to let you explore it. And the difference is even more obvious when you look at games that truly put the emphasis on exploration. Games that reimagine what it could mean to explore. Zelda Breath of the Wild, Elden Ring, or the hypothesis of the idea, Outer Wilds. These games really want you to engage with the world, look around. They've let go of hand-holding, and they accepted that you could miss some of the content, because there can't be wanderlust without the possibility of missing something. I never found the way in the Alec tree when I first played through Elden Ring, and it's okay. Because were I to find it, it would have been an amazing discovery. And if it was a map marker like any other games, well, what's the difference between that and looking it up on the internet? By taking a chance on players, the developers permitted actual excitement. Because now every corner could hide something interesting. I think it's also why I'm not able to replay these games. I've played each From Software games at least twice. At least. Except for Elden Ring. Because for me, what I enjoyed the most from it was that I never knew what was going to happen. Where I would end up, what was relevant and what wasn't. I synced in almost 100 hours on my first playthrough. And yet, anytime I tried to boot it up again for a second playthrough, I never managed to immerse myself for long enough to go past the first region. Same for Breath of the Wild, and well, for Outer Wilds I think it's not really possible to replay it since there's no other mechanic than exploring. And that's a sacrifice needed for an engaging exploration, hindering replayability. That being said, I'm sure millions of people did many playthroughs of these games, and I'm not saying that they are wrong doing so. What I'm saying is that I've never found a bigger gap between my enjoyment of my first and second playthrough than with these games. Which is completely different from Witcher 3, where in my second and third playthrough I would still enjoy it just for the incredible writing and the many choices you had. But for titles truly about exploration, for me they are synonymous with instant nostalgia, a feeling of missing an experience that is impossible to recreate fully. Like in life, once naivete dies at the hand of knowledge, you long for the magic of a lost mystery. And that, to me, is the bittersweet meaning of exploration. The tragic dance between seeking the answer to a mystery and dreading the void solving it would leave behind.